Good morning from Milano. It is Friday, December 29th, the last episode of the year for Dear Constance, episode 156. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm delighted to share this conversation with my friend Arielle Nobile. I really enjoyed my conversation with Eric Egan, and thank you to those of you who wrote to me. I got so many messages. People really enjoyed the conversation with Eric. And if you missed that, it's episode 151 from December 18th. I had this really strange thing happen when I was in Buenos Aires. I found myself hosting an old pal, Arielle, who actually lives in Argentina. And I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity to have another conversation. Actually, when I set out on my 5-month experiment or adventure, however we want to call that, I was thinking that I'd be doing a lot more of these conversations. And when that didn't happen, I thought, oh, well, I guess that's not what I'm meant to do. I love that these have come up so organically. I want to invite you to get to know Arielle without spewing at you all of her professional accolades, of which she has many, because that's not how I relate to her. She is a woman I met at a conference, and it didn't matter that we hadn't seen each other for many years. Without hesitation, I invited her to spend the night. My conversations with her have always been extremely energizing and interesting to me because they are raw and real. So I hope you enjoy it. I will add a few comments at the end, and I want to apologize in advance for the poor sound quality. You may have to turn your volume up. With no further ado, my conversation with my dear buddy, Arielle Nobile. So, good morning, Arielle. One thing I wanted to start with, it's funny because when I opened the door downstairs, I thought to myself, wait, I don't even really remember how we met. And this morning, when I thought, oh, I'm going to have a conversation with Arielle, I said, well, let me look up a little bit about her background, because I literally don't relate to you as anything of your professional, hats. In fact, yesterday when we were talking, you have a lot of different professional hats, what I call iterations, and I didn't know about it. So this morning I went on LinkedIn and I thought, let me just take a quick look here. And the second I started looking, I stopped, because that's not what's important to me. So before we get started, can you give some context without reading your resume? Like, who are you? And you can say whatever you want. Like, maybe what are your most recent iterations?
I was raised to be an artist. So I'm a creator of different mediums and things. I've always been playing with creativity. I started doing theater when I was 9, but not like normal theater, like experimental-ish, like improv things. And I'm from Chicago, big on improv, big on playing with energy. So I feel like really I'm an energy worker, I would say. If I had to like sum it all up of all the connections of everything, I do think that all of the work I do involves healing of some kind, myself and other people, but healing through creativity and through telling our stories and through telling each other stories and being witness of each other's stories and seeing and acknowledging and holding each other in that way. I think that's what we're here to do. So I try to do it in all different ways. And I make documentaries, I make music, I read tarot cards, I do all kinds of things that help people and myself to just evolve, hopefully, and grow more aware and conscious.
Okay, so wait.
Yeah.
From a creative, let's just say a creative magician, if you will, let's say you have practiced in different mediums and you've dabbled.
I was an actress too.
Can you give us a little glimpse into your filmmaker hat?
Well, okay. So I've been making films, private documentaries. I've made over probably 150 documentaries at this point, but they're all private.
You're kidding me.
No. So private families for the last 20 years have hired me to come into their family system, basically, and listen to their stories and then mirror them back to them through professionally HBO-worthy documentaries. It was an idea that came through a Jungian therapist I had in my 20s.
So what therapist?
A Jungian, Carl Jung.
Oh, yeah, Jungian.
It was a great way to squelch the ego a lot, right? Like, what filmmaker wants to make films that not massive people are going to see? Well, I became that filmmaker. And then I saw how powerful just the storytelling aspect of it is and the craft of it is and what it can do to be witnessed in that way. So it's like there's multiple layers of it. There's the layer of just giving people a chance to really, I mean, I sit with people for like the main storytellers about 16 hours total, and each session is like 4 hours. So you can imagine how deep the connection gets. And when do we ever get to tell our story like that? Basically never. So there's that layer of just the process of getting the stories out there. We're working on some amazing stories right now that are really connected to my ancestry, actually, just synchronistically. And I'm learning so much. People who are from a part of the world where there seems to be a lot of war forever, and the damaging, traumatic, damaging way that cycles. I'm really interested in generational trauma, but also in healing. And I don't know who coined this, but post-traumatic wisdom. I last heard it in a book.
Post-traumatic wisdom. Wow, that's a great word.
That's Oprah, and the psychiatrist just wrote a book called What Happened to You.
Can you briefly tell me about how the filmmaking and the storytelling works? Like, why would someone contact you?
It's a niche at this point.
Okay.
I mean, I started out being very general of like, okay, anyone wants to tell me their story, throwing spaghetti at the walls. Now it's become mostly extremely ultra high net worth families that they are probably looking at passing down a ton of money, and they're really nervous that their families doesn't understand what it's for, what the history of it is. And there's just a lot of lost connection. So it's beyond the wealth, right? It's like, what is this legacy really about? The word legacy has like a tombstone effect sometimes, and it is related to financial matters in a lot of ways in the US at least. But there's so much more beyond that. And so I really help people focus on their history and what we can learn from it, their present, and then their vision for the future. And at this point, we only work with families that will let us talk to 3 generations at least, because it has to have all those voices. I learned that that's where the healing comes in, because if you just have the elder generation sort of barking what their story is at you, most people don't want to hear it. And vice versa, if it's just the sort of, oh, my mom's so great, like the BS of people blowing smoke up someone's ass because they're maybe going to inherit something, that's also not going to work. I'm like looking for the clues of where are the missing connections? What are those connections that need to be fostered? Where is the healing potential? Now, some people don't want anything to do with the word healing or anything like that, and I don't bring it up unless I can feel, I'm very intuitive, I can feel like that's a place. There's usually one person in the family who's very open and wants that. But also, I imagine that it could be someone in 100 years that watches these films and says, oh gosh, now I understand everything about what went down. And there's like this adage in the wealth industry of especially the high net worth and ultra high net worth space, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, which means most wealth is gained and lost within 3 generations. So it's kind of like a cautionary tale, and people are all freaked out about it. I'm not a wealth advisor. It's just those are people who can afford to hire me. But it's possible that the next 3 generations will have nothing, but they'll have this story to look back on. And what to me is more interesting and more important is the way that we rise and we fall and we survive it all. And we do it through how we frame our stories. Because you can have a very like disempowering frame that stops you completely and makes you weak in a way and energetically unstable and sick, really. Or you can be empowered by your story, and no matter what has happened to you, you look at siblings in a family, there's such a gamut of experience and they have the same quote unquote upbringing. But what I do always look for are the common threads. And it's not a Pollyanna story, but it's also not an expose. I'm trying to bring out the soul of the family, the soul of the individual, because the information is actually secondary.
Have you had experiences where the films you're making about these families serve as a catalyst for reframing?
I think yes. And again, I think it ends up somewhat more being about I think everyone has their own experience. Families as a unit are complex animals. I know that individuals within the families have major shifts. I have this amazing dear friend who's become a dear friend, but she was my client. She's in her 80s, and her mother was still alive. She was in her 70s. Her mother was like 90 something. She wasn't even going to have me interview her. It was about her husband's family because they had the money. And I was like, well, I think you have daughters, all daughters, and you have granddaughters. I think the women's story should be told too. So I got to interview her mother. And she said the first time she watched it, she just cried the whole way through. Just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. It was super healing. She had an intense relationship, and her mother's since passed away. And I think for her mother to tell me her stories was also like, really, it was so taboo. She'd had a mother who was extremely really, really alcoholic, like, blacking out and
Her
disappearing.
her grand
Her
her
grandmother had been, and it was like, and I knew about this from my client and her brother, but the mother, when I asked about it, made me pause and said, am I supposed to talk about this? And so part of the power of this all being private is that you can talk about anything. And I always say, if you say something to me, you wish you hadn't said it, no one will ever hear it. I'm not trying to get you.
yes.
And
So
that's where trust is built.
would it be fair to say that you became a power listener by default?
That's a good question. I've never thought of that term. What does that mean?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of power in listening, and
Well,
it's a skill, and I can't imagine that you haven't honed your listening skills and your
that's where
the connection between listening and intuition. And then
that's where I feel like the the acting piece, the theater piece really comes in, because really good actors, which I was a good actor, I just didn't want to pursue the whole career, are the best listeners. It's not about speaking, it's about being present with the other person in the scene or with the story. So I learned how to do that from a really young age, and not even just listening to each other, listening to the space, listening to the energy of what wants to emerge. I don't like the words active listening.
how would you
I
phrase
call it revolutionary listening. I did a TEDx talk about that.
Oh, I love that term, revolutionary listening. That was the name of your TED Talk? Say more. Tell us more about that.
I've come to see that listening can transform both the person being listened to and the person doing the listening. I've never not been transformed by listening to someone deeply.
It's interesting because before you said that, I was going to ask you, how has all of your really countless hours of listening informed your own life?
In every way. I mean, I know without a doubt that you have to be as present as you can in each moment and really as alive as you can in each moment. And I'm not saying I live a perfect life, but my life is pretty great. And I think it's mostly because of that listening, because I've also listened to what people didn't do and the regrets people have. It's not even the regrets of like, oh, I wish I had moved to this house or done this thing. It's more of the deeper layer of being regrets. And I think it's also in the questions we ask when we're listening and the questions we ask ourselves. And even honestly, having to hold myself back from, I'm listening to somebody and oh my gosh, there's so many juicy connections I have that I want to make and tell them. And sometimes I do share because that helps bring people out. But a lot of times just having to sit on my own impulse to interact in an interview is so powerful. It's helped me be so much more patient, present, and also seeing myself as like a vessel instead of a role, I guess. And like, again, that ego piece, we're never going to kill our ego. I don't want to. It keeps me safe. But also being open. I've always been extremely open to energy, to people, to experiences. But I think the listening in this way for many hours, I mean, it's my favorite thing to do. And it's kind of what's coming through with music now. I feel like when I'm writing songs, I'm listening. I'm playing a note and I'm listening for what's going to come. What are the words that are coming? I'm not inventing them. I'm not being clever. I'm not thinking it. I think it's that dropping into your like energy body, your heart, your spirit, and letting go of the mind. My mind is very active. It's very fast. And I have also really learned, through many things, but through the listening, to not believe my thoughts and actively not believe them. Because I hear how many people live their lives through the mode of their mind and how that went. And then there's so many people I've worked with, and these are highly successful people, whatever quote unquote, modern day success. So much of it was led through intuition or instinct or just, I had a feeling. And I just have learned so much from these amazing people I've gotten to sit with. So I feel very privileged and fortunate just to have been in these rooms with people. And also, one of the things I had to do, especially because I was so young when I started my business, I was 25. And I was interviewing CEOs of billion-dollar companies. And I was then sort of the granddaughter character, right, coming to them. But I just was like, from the beginning, first name. There's no hierarchy here. We're two humans having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do that to psych myself into doing it and not be, nervous. But it really served well because status is another big thing I learned from theater. I taught at Second City in Chicago, and we taught status is how you, as a character, as an actor, you walk into the space, your body language, your energy denotes the status. And there's so much power play there when you talk about power listening. So maybe, yes, maybe I have been using power listening without calling it that. But I mean, do you know how many, and this is something Oprah talked about in this book that I loved it, how many people who seem really, tough and strong and they've got it together. This one man who was such a character, owns some big sports teams and, high-powered attorney. And he asked me at the end of the interviews, like good? Was it good?
Oh my gosh, I love that. And that was one of the things that Oprah said of all of her work. At the end of the day, everybody wants to
be validated and seen. Everybody wants to be seen and heard. I think that is the universal human condition. We want to be seen and heard. We mostly don't feel it. We get interrupted. I mean, I come from a family of interrupters. That was how I started it. And I have that tendency too. My daughter's, since she heard me doing that talk, she's constantly, you're interrupting me. And I'm like, I'm sorry. It's not like I was born a perfect listener. I don't think I felt listened to. I don't have a big family. When we're together, there's just everyone's talking. It's excitement. But I'm a really sensitive soul, so it made me shut down a bit because I was like, well, fine, you don't want to hear me? I'm not going to talk.
Gosh, thank you for sharing. I thought it would be fun to do a rapid fire session. Tell me a little bit about what comes up for you when I say certain words. Slowing down.
Oh my God, it's the best.
Say more.
I have just changed my entire life and moved to a small city in northern Argentina where there's a siesta every day. The whole city shuts down. I mean, you really can't hear anything. From 1 p.m. to 4:30 p.m., it is a ghost town, and I love it. I love how slow everything is. Drove me crazy at first. I've been on a fast track for a long time. That was something I really learned in the pandemic, that I loved the time is our most valuable resource. We do not get it back. We do not have extra time. And there's so many expressions and idioms about time: kill time, spend time. I'm like, I just want to slow time down. I think it comes with parenthood too. Like, my daughter is growing up so fast, and I just love being a mom, and I want to just savor it, even though she's a teenager now. And sometimes I want to pause. Slowing down has allowed me to, it can be so painful too, because your feelings, there's a lot more feelings when you slow down. You can't speed through things, but it's just, there's a luxury in slowing down.
What about stepping away from, before coming to the decision to change your life and move to a small town out 2.5 hours outside of Buenos Aires, did you have fear of losing connection to the real world, as we say?
I would call it, my dad always called it the rat race. And I think I had heard that a lot as a kid, just him wanting to sort of escape from it. I feel very connected. I feel like I can be just as connected as I was before, but I have like a dial with the energy. Most of my interactions in the week are through Zoom with people in the States, and I love that. I love that technology lets me be here. The time difference works really well because I'm not liking to talk in the morning. So my workday can start at noon, and that's 9 a.m. in Chicago.
Okay, the next one is friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring this up because I talk a lot about making the effort to connect to people and to show up. And I think that you and I are actually quite a good example of that. I'm relating to you out of curiosity, out of a sense of adventure. And I think it's a beautiful thing. So say something to me about friendship, or take that wherever you want.
Friendships have been some of the most transformational connections of my life. I have some friends I've had since I was 5, and I have friends I made last week. I love humans. I think I know we're all connected. There's a tarot card that I love, which is called Relating. It's about creating a way of relating to someone versus creating a relationship. My intuitive teacher, Sonia Choquette. I've studied a lot with her, and she calls it connecting soul to soul versus role to role.
Oh, I love that. What's Sonia's last name?
Sonia
Can you spell
Choquette,
that?
CHOQUETTE. She's amazing. SoniaChoquette.net, I think. But she has taught me a lot about that. And because we are all spirit in human form. And so I can connect to you as this person, this New Yorker, this powerhouse, where I can see beyond all that and just see your beautiful smile and your glow and your sparkle. When we first met, I feel like I remember just looking at your eyes. I'm like, oh, here's this beautiful spirit. I want to know more.
So how did we meet? I actually don't remember.
We met at a women's conference, I think in Colorado.
What conference was that?
Emerging Women.
Oh, Emerging Women. That's right.
Emerging Women.
And we sat next to each other.
We sat next to each other in one of the main stage things. I just sat next to you, and I think it came out that I'd gone to NYU and you lived in New York, and that was sort of the beginning. That was a long time ago. It was either 2015 or 16. I don't remember.
And we've only seen each other
twice or something.
Yes. And here we are spending
having a sleepover.
So here we are spending the night, having a sleepover, and having the time of our life, connecting. What was it you said before?
Connecting soul to soul.
Yeah, connecting soul to soul. I literally had to look up your role this morning before you woke up. All right, let's move on. Synchronicity. I've noticed that you've been using that word a lot. Say more.
It's the magic that weaves my day together, and I'm always paying attention to it. I don't believe that things are random or just haphazard or coincidence. I believe that literally one of my morning prayers is I pray for beautiful surprises and miracles, and I'm constantly fascinated. At the end of the day, I then write a list of what were they? And so I'm paying attention to the magic. That was something I had a coach years ago who really helped me. So I had this coach who had me create this structure in my day where I started the day attuning to miracles. It was a miracle game she had me play. And that was anything that I had a desire for but didn't express but happened anyway. And so at the end of the day, I would write a list of 3 miracles that had happened. And
so tell us how it works. Tell us the little formula. How does it work?
It's a game.
I love it.
I play.
Oh, I love
It's a game I play.
A life game.
Yes. It could be, I really want so-and-so to call me, or I really want to talk to this person, or they cross your mind. Then they call you, or they reach out. I mean, I am not kidding with you. This week, I was thinking about you. I was like, I wonder if she came to South America after all. And I checked my other phone, which I don't check every day. And there you were that same day writing to me.
That is so cool.
And it's so powerful because we are synced up. That's what synchronicity is. It's like the way that we're all connected and synchronized. And it helps me to sync up with my own ability to create the life that I want to live.
For me, there are 2 things that are important about that. One is I always talk about my awareness practice. It doesn't matter what your awareness practice is. Capturing synchronicities is a sort of an awareness practice. And what it does is it makes you more present to your life, of course, but it, in my mind, creates a sense of positive expectation because what you focus on is what you see more of. So you actually can frame that for yourself or carve out the way you see things through simple life hacks like, what's it called?
It's a miracle game.
The miracle game.
Yeah.
I love that. Going to play the miracle game. Okay, let's end with this. We had a really intense moment yesterday and talking about this one word, and I want you to talk to me. It's going to make me cry. I want you to, sorry.
Can I say something about your tears?
Mm-hmm.
So I am someone who I don't cry that easily, but I don't like to cry. I was told not to cry as a kid a lot. And Sonia, I did a small salon in her apartment in Paris once. And I immediately started crying when it was my turn to speak, like a lot.
Welcome to the plague of being Constance Klein.
And I always try to stuff it.
Me too.
And she said, let those tears out. Tears are the most healing liquid in the body. When you let your tears out, you are releasing all of that trauma. And literally, it's biochemical healing. It's alchemical healing that those tears hold. When you let them flow, you transform yourself. Doesn't mean I like to cry, but it does mean that I view tears differently. They're cleansing.
Yes. I know that. I believe that. And it doesn't make it any easier for me.
Absolutely.
So that leads me to what I was trying to say before I lost my shit is this. Talk to me about the word voice.
The vulnerability of voice. Well, we were talking about how I feel that voice and singing, particularly for me, has been the thing I've hidden from the most because it's where I feel the most raw and seen and freaked out by that. And you then made this connection with maybe where we have our most power is in our voice. And I think that so many people silence themselves or are silenced. And, there's so many self-help things about getting your voice out. I mean, I studied at NYU, one of the techniques we studied for voice was freeing the natural voice. And I feel like I have been trying my whole life and failing. I mean, I was once in a voice workshop, of improv voice, and I couldn't feel vibration because voice is about vibration too. I couldn't feel it anywhere below, like here. And I was just weeping because I felt like everyone else can do this and I can't connect to my voice. But I feel like I finally am.
I think an important thing about voice that we discussed is this. There are many ways to express your voice. It can be in songwriting. It can be in the spoken word, in a poem, in this podcast. There are many different forms. And you obviously have been your whole life playing with your voice as an actor, as a filmmaker, as a writer. And I think what we touched upon yesterday is when you told me, and I was shocked that you said you feel most raw and vulnerable and seen singing.
Mm-hmm.
I found that so interesting because I think that's really what we're talking about here. Which iteration, which manifestation of your voice
is the edge. To me, it's about the edge, right? It's the edge. It's where, oh my God, I'm at the cliff. And like, so I love Milan Kundera and I love his book, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, because of this one part about vertigo. Have you read it?
Yes, but I don't remember.
Vertigo not being the fear of falling, but the fear of wanting to leap.
Wow.
And that I read that and I just was like, oh, shit. Like that's all of this for me. I think that's what singing is, because when I'm in my voice fully, I have such a huge range and I can go all over and I can be so raw and emotional. But when I feel unsafe or I'm feeling judged or I'm judging myself, or it just closes up and it's gone.
Yeah.
It's just
and that's kind of when you know that that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. Because here's the thing that's so weird about me. Like acting first scared me. Speaking, I could speak in front of a lot of people and it doesn't make me nervous. I can do things that most people are terrified to do and it doesn't make me flinch. This makes me, it excites me in a different way. It doesn't make me scared like I want to throw up. It makes me like, was I born for this? Like maybe I was. I've been wanting to do this since I was a little girl.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I love that idea.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting because I found myself actually at the Black History Museum in Washington, D.C. And I guess it somehow reconnected me with this lifelong interest I've had in orators and the spoken word. And I have had so many people tell me that I have a beautiful voice. And I started to believe it.
Yes. So here's what I'll say. All of the practices that I've committed myself to because they're nurturing to me all revolve around self-love. Most people are not taught to love themselves. It's not really something that was discussed. I don't know about younger generations now. I'm definitely teaching it to my daughter, but all of it is about self-love to me. So now that I can like improvise a song on my freaking phone and then listen to it and love the way it sounds and fall in love with my voice and fall in love with the sound, it makes me so joyful because I'm like, I love myself. I finally do. I've gotten there. And I mean, that is the thing. I think that it is connected to self-love and self-acceptance. Last year, my word of the year was radical acceptance. I was going through a lot. The move was really hard. And I was just like, acceptance.
That's so interesting that you talked about your word of the year, because I think it brings us full circle on this. For 2023, actually, my thing that I had written at the front of my book was to put myself in the way of interesting people.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing it.
Here you are. The universe delivered Arielle Nobile. Thank you so much. It's been so incredible to connect.
It has been. And it's, what I love about connection with other spirits and souls is that it's timeless. I hope I see you soon, but I could see you in 10 years and we would just pick up.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
It's a miracle.
It's going to be on my, what's it called? The magic?
Your miracle list.
In my miracle list. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe travels home. Thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoyed getting to know Arielle. We had an absolute blast together, not only recording the conversation, but sharing meals, walking the streets of Buenos Aires, and talking about everything under the sun. If you'd like to learn more about Arielle and her work, I would direct you to a website called Belonging in the USA. She has a 3-part documentary coming up on PBS, and it's called Belonging in the USA, Stories from Our Neighbors. And here's what it says on the website. a film trilogy about people who were supposed to remain silent, who told their stories anyway. Told by society that they didn't belong and shouldn't even exist, these courageous storytellers' quest for justice and identity lead them to true belonging, purpose, and community. As she says on the website, the underlying premise of this work is this: if you exist, you belong, period. On the About section of the website, you can learn all about her colorful, fascinating past. I'll end with Arrivederci to 2023. I so look forward to sharing 2024 with you. Until then, from my heart to yours.